Hey, were you having a decent weekend? You weren't? Okay, well, Derek Carr is retired. Maybe that will cheer you up, and we'll talk about it right here on the Straight Up Saints podcast.
You're listening to the Straight Up Saints podcast.
What is up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome inside an emergency edition of the Straight Up Saints podcast. I'm your host, Chris Rosvoglu, and we got a lot to talk about today here. And I'll try to be as accurate as possible and also as energetic as possible because this is a shock to the system on a Saturday morning. I'm just doing my work as I always do. And, I see something pop up on my timeline about Derek Carr. I got to give it a look. Maybe it's one of those mysterious updates on his shoulder injury, one that gives us no clarity as to what happened. And then bam, you find out the dude has retired at 34 years old, which means for the New Orleans Saints, it's actually a beneficial game because they're going to recoup the $30 million for this season from his deal. Now, they don't recoup the $10 million, or they're not going to seek the $10 million they gave him as a signing bonus, which I think is a classy thing to do by the organization and the right thing to do by the organization given the situation, because clearly, I was giving him shit. We're all giving Derek Carr shit. His injury must have been severe enough for him to walk away from the game that he loves. But for the Saints to not go after that $10 million, I think it makes sense. And obviously you get $30 million in cap relief if you're the Saints. So Saints got money to spend. Derek Carr's situation is no longer a burden like we all thought it would be for this year and next year. So that's a huge plus. Now, before I get into the future of this team at quarterback, obviously get into your thoughts, because that's probably going to drive this emergency podcast for today. I know I usually ramble for like 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then I kind of pass the baton to your comments. I'll probably spend another 2 minutes, 3 minutes on this, and then pass it over to any comments. So if you guys are in the live chat, please like the video. It greatly helps out the channel, and we really appreciate it here at Boot Crew Media. And also make sure you get your comments in so I can get them up in the chat, and we can go from there. But I'm going to read Derek Carr's statement on the injury. Then I'll read what the Saints read, and then I'll kick it over to what you guys have to say. So Derek Carr earlier today announced his retirement, and let me pull it up from Ian Rappaport because he had this statement from Carr, which, by the way, I still can't believe this is real. Like, I know it sounds ridiculous, but I just can't believe it's real. Derek Carr said, and I quote, he said, upon reflection of prayer and discussion with Heather, his wife, I've decided to retire from the National Football League. For more than 11 years, we've been incredibly blessed, and we're forever grateful and humbled by this experience. It's difficult to find the right words to express our thanks to all the teammates, coaches, management, ownership, team officials, and especially the fans who made this journey so special. Your unwavering support has meant the world to us. So that's what Derek Carr put out. And then the Saints put out this statement earlier today regarding Derek Carr's decision. They said, Derek Carr's announced retirement in late March while ramping up his preparation for the 2025 season. Derek experienced pain in his right shoulder. Eventually, medical stands determined objectively that Derek sustained a labral tear and significant degenerative changes to his rotator cuff, which, by the way, sounds terrible. We know that Drew Brees had a rotator cuff injury early on in his career. Since that time, Derek, his representation, can't even speak right now, Saints medical team and outside medical experts have worked together to determine the best path forward. Surgery was an option, which would jeopardize the entire 2025 season. And Derek had no guaranteed return to the level of strength that he's accustomed to. Upon further consultation, he retired from the NFL. So there you go. There's a story. Degenerative shoulder issues, by the way, sounds like an absolute bitch. So before I, take off the victory lap here, I do hope Derek Carr gets better, and maybe not playing in the NFL anymore will let him have what us normal folks have when it comes to your daily activities. And maybe it was just one of those things for to be an NFL quarterback. It's just not sustainable anymore, especially at this age. So obviously my thoughts are with him, because just because I'm happy that the Saints are getting out of this financial crisis doesn't mean I can't feel bad for the dude who now has to retire early because of an injury. That said, in a black and white world for a lot of things, and a win-lose situation for the Saints, because the NFL is a business, this is a win. You are moving on from the $30 million for this season. You're gaining cap relief. And now, more importantly, which has been my big, thing this entire last 2 weeks since the Saints drafted Tyler Shuck, I've been saying, you got to start Tyler Shuck, because you got to figure out if this kid's going to be your franchise quarterback, if he has any semblance of being a franchise quarterback. Well, now that you're moving on from Derek Carr and you are, going towards these young quarterbacks, whether it's Shuck or Rattler, in some sense, some shape or form, we are going to get a little bit of an answer as to what the Saints have at quarterback for not just the 2025 season, but maybe the seasons after that. And if Shuck is, intriguing and promising this year, then the Saints might have their quarterback in the future. And if not, you go into next offseason knowing you have to draft a quarterback in what could be a loaded class, and you'll have a shit ton of money to spend, and you don't have to worry about this Derek Carr cloud hanging over. So again, I wish him all the best. I am not going to try and act like an ass and say, Derek Carr, I don't care how he recovers. I hope he recovers well. I hope he's able to enjoy the next chapter of his life. But for the New Orleans Saints right now, and as someone who only cares about the Saints when it comes to the NFL, I am happy we are finally done with this situation. It took a turn that I did not expect. I thought this would end with them cutting him or him getting traded. But at the end of the day, the job is done. And us Saints fans, it kind of feels like a weight's lifted off our shoulders, and you can enjoy this season. Might not be a good one, but you can enjoy it knowing new coach, new quarterback, and that's a breath of fresh air that we've all been dying to have. So let me get into comments that you guys have, and we'll go from there. We got a what the fuck. We got a what an off season. We got to know what the actual fuck. So clearly you guys are up there. Does this get us a decent comp pick in a future draft? It will not get them a comp pick. That would have to be like, losing free agents and whatnot. Saints don't gain or lose from Derek Carr retiring. So no comp pick gain. The big gain here is the $30 million that you recoup in salary cap relief. That's the humongous gain for the Saints that they gain in this situation. And there's no doubt about it that that's going to help them. Peyton says, let's go. Cody says, this helped cure a hangover quick. Look, I'm obviously, I'm not hungover. I work early on Saturdays. I usually run like a 8 to 6 on Saturdays. So I'm just sitting there and, I've been up early, so my eyes weren't crushed or anything, but I'm looking at my dual screen that I have set up, and I see that, Derek Carr's face just pops up on TweetDeck, and I'm like, well, what the fuck now? And I did a double take, and then I did a triple take, and I was like, holy shit, this guy actually retired. Like, this wasn't a joke. So pretty stunning. Obviously, 735 says future's looking bright. I don't know if it changes that, but it definitely makes us feel a little bit more optimistic on this Saturday. That's for sure. Chosen Fit says, wow, this is crazy. He took the money and left us. He did take some money, but he's not taking all of the money. Like, I want to preface that, right? Like, I know Derek Carr's been the villain for New Orleans for the last 2 years, but out of the $40 million for this season, he's only getting 10 of that back, really. Like, the Saints are not going to fight over a signing bonus, which I think is the right thing to do. When you start doing that, it looks bad for other players in the future. Like, why would I want to play for this franchise if that's how they conduct themselves? The Saints obviously don't have to worry about that now. You're letting him take that 10. The $30 million you're recouping, though, in cap relief is humongous, guys. Like, that's a huge gain for the Saints and what they might be able to, do, whether it's this year, next year, rolling it over. So we'll see what happens with this team. But, man, this is crazy. Now, here's an update from Nick Underhill, by the way. I'm going to read this out. So here's my understanding of how the money works. Carr will keep the roster bonus from this year, and he walks away. In the end, he's doing the team a huge solid on the money front. The retirement will be filed after June 1st, which then lets the team split the cap hit. So the sides are clearly in accord on all this, and there's been cooperation on all sides despite speculation. So, in an offseason where Derek Carr's done a lot of annoying shit, huge thumbs up to Derek Carr because he's handled this like an absolute champ for us Saints fans. So who knew that he could have a graceful exit here? Chosen says, thank you, Lord. Mickey Loomis is next. Jack says the Shuck era has begun. Can Mickey retire next? Doubt it. Xavier says best offseason news ever. Ever. Wow, that's pretty strong, but I could understand that sentiment. E says we got $30 million in cap relief from this. He's just keeping the $10 million signing bonus. You got it right there, E. Jack says, do you think the Saints should try to get another quarterback on a one-year deal just for the experience, considering their quarterback's rooms, QB room, a lack of it? Who the fuck is out there at quarterback at this point? Let me just pull it up. I don't really think there's a lot left. I don't disagree with the idea, though. I do believe, like, if you're the Saints, you desperately need to add someone out there, but who's the guy? I'll give you the one name that intrigues me, actually. And this isn't for him to start. This is just to bring experience to the locker room. Teddy Bridgewater. He's a free agent. Us New Orleans fans love him. I'd be cool with them bringing Teddy Bridgewater because I don't think you don't bring in a Rodgers. Probably don't bring in a Carson Wentz because he's probably maybe looking for a chance to start. I don't know. Bridgewater seems like the perfect fit. Stemulus says, I prayed for times like this. So did I, man. It's the best case scenario. E says Jake Haener also has to go. Don't disagree with that, but I mean, we'll let training camp decide his fate. Loomis ought to feel dumb as fuck right now. He didn't win nothing for you. Took your money and quit on you. Yeah, you got one job to do it now. Again, I'm all for people wanting to rip Loomis for certain things. This is a win for the Saints, guys. He's giving them $30 million in cap relief. And, I talked about this on Wednesday because we had a live stream, which we're going to do now every Wednesday. Just a heads up for that here at Booker Media. I was talking about Derek Carr and what they have to do. And I said, man, I would just cut him now. And yeah, all right, you have to take on the cap hit this year and next year, and you got to break it up a little bit, but you're going to have to pay the bill at some point. So why not just do it now and get it over with? And this was prior to knowing that he might retire. You're pretty much in the same boat now, but you're going to get some cap relief because he's retiring as opposed to just outright cutting him. So I would say that there are days to rip Mickey Loomis. Today is not that day, though. Again, there are days to rip him. And if we want to rip him for this signing, all right, fine. But the way this has now been handled is a win for the New Orleans Saints. They are moving off from Derek Carr, and they are going to gain cap relief as opposed to getting absolutely fucked over and having nothing to spend out of this. So this is actually a move that helps the Saints. Jerry G says, hey, is this for real? I really can't believe it is, Jerry, but it is. It's such a crazy thing. Jack says, this or a trade was the best case scenario out of this atrocious contract. So thank you, football gods and Mickey Loomis. You were saved by a miracle. Fair enough. Jimmy says, don't play with me. Hey, man, look, I would understand that, right? Imagine like Saturday, you guys are just chilling, and then you see on YouTube like a thumbnail, Derek Carr retires, and you'd be like, you sure about that? You just making up shit? Only the Saints, by the way. I know other teams go through dramatic off seasons, but the Saints, shit breaks at the weirdest times. Like I've learned in life that when it comes to covering the Saints, you'll never get a moment of peace. And when you want one and you think that you're in it, just know something's going to break. Now, this isn't the same scope, but I remember last year, I was having like a rough stretch, like mentally. And I was like, I'm going to take myself to the movies on a Monday. It's going to be empty. I'm going to enjoy myself. And I'm sitting there, I'm enjoying my movie. And then it breaks and the Saints are about to sign Chase Young. I'm like, well, now I'm leaving the movie early. I'm going back home to cover this. And it's like, I've just learned with the Saints, shit happens at weird times. I had a birthday dinner for my sister one time. We're at this nice restaurant. Drew Brees announces his retirement. I'm like, well, now I have shit to do. So this Saints team at any moment can just drop a bomb on you. And that's what kind of happened with this Derek Carr retirement. Cool Sports Rhyme says, wow, I was thinking we would trade him to the Steelers for 2 draft picks. That was a spot that I thought if they were to trade him. Now that isn't the case, obviously. He is moving on to retirement. Montauk says, thank you to the good Lord. Slept on promos and reviews. Says, hell yeah, let's go. Jerry G says, well, I was dreaming. Well, if that's what it is, sure feels good. So bye-bye. Obviously, 735. Chris, how do you feel about this? I'm sure I kind of probably answered it in my opening, but I do believe this is great for the Saints. You had to move on from this situation at some point. So now to gain some cap relief out of it, I mean, just humongous news for this team. And I think, for the New Orleans, the biggest thing for them is this was a dark cloud over the franchise right now because you're paying him a lot of money. You don't know if he wants to be part of the team. Is it going to cause a negative, dynamic between him and the rest of the guys? And you have this clear disconnect between the fan base and Derek Carr. And it was unavoidable. Like, you could not ignore the fact that us fans did not see eye to eye with Derek Carr, and vice versa. He didn't see eye to eye with the fans. And to move on from this and then find out that it was done gracefully in a way where Derek gets to retire for once, he's actually viewed in a good light in the Saints uniform on his way out, which is great for him, obviously, is the best possible scenario, So that's just the way I view it. Wesley says, Chris, what are the details of the cap situation? Do we have now additional $30 million in 2025 and it's off the books next year? From what it sounds like, it seems like he'll still be on the books next year. I'll see if there's an update on it. I'm still waiting for that to come out, but maybe Over the Cap put something, or maybe Spot Rack did. But I'm ready for someone to provide an update. There's still no update on that. They're gonna gain $30 million in cap relief. It's just a matter of when. As for the managing that aspect of his contract, I think you're going to see it's going to be a little bit this year and a little bit next year, just like it would have been if he'd been released. That's just the way I view it, or at least the way it sounds for now. I'm trying to see if someone will provide an update though, but I have not seen anything yet. I think it's going to be a little complicated though, because it's going to get filed post June 1st. So expect dead cap hits. I just don't know how brutal it will be for the Saints. Daniel says, did y'all really not like Derek Carr? Yes. We did not like Derek Carr. I could answer that one, firmly. As for who's their quarterback now, most likely Tyler Shuck. I think that's where it's going to be, where they're heading. That's just where we're at. Boston Ballfont says, would you like to see the Saints sign a veteran? If so, who? Yeah, I answered before, but I think maybe call on Teddy Bridgewater, see if he wants to come back to New Orleans. Good veteran, nice presence, understands the culture there really well. I don't know if it's not going to be a sexy signing, but I don't think the Saints should be in that market. There's also no quarterback out there as a free agent who's going to make a huge difference for the Saints other than Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers is obviously not coming to the Saints, and the Saints obviously shouldn't sign Aaron Rodgers. So I'm going to go with Teddy Bridgewater as my guy that I'd like to see them sign. Montauk says Spencer Rattler probably be the starter opening day. We'll see, man. We'll see. They're definitely going to battle it out. Hot take 77. DC was tough, played through injuries, but couldn't handle criticism. Not a very good leader. I'm glad he was good enough to find a way for us to recoup the money. I wish him the best. Glad he's gone. I mean, that's a pretty good way of covering, right? Like, I wish him the best. I don't want this guy to be dealing with shoulder pain in retirement. He's got kids, got other things you want to do outside of football. He's obviously made a ton of money. And, the differences that I have as a fan watching Derek Carr are not personal. It's just how you conduct yourself on the football field. He's probably a good dude, seems like a good family man, and those are things that really matter in life. But like you said, there are clear problems he had in New Orleans, whether it was leadership, whether it's things he said to the media, and the Saints are going to move on from that now. And us fans will feel a little bit better about it. Donald says we may win 2 games this season. I don't know. I mean, I don't think the ceiling is super high for this team, but I would argue that it all hinges on how Kellen Moore is able to get his quarterback to play. Like, who's to say Tyler Shuck doesn't look like a pretty good rookie quarterback, and then all of a sudden the Saints are not a playoff team, but 6-11, and their quarterback looks like he could be the future. They got to build out the rest of the roster. And again, I'm not saying us Saints fans should aspire for a 6-11 season. Hear me out on that part. But what I'm saying is, I don't think it's going to be as clear-cut as other things where it's like, hey, you got to win X amount of games to know it's a good season. No, if the Saints finish this season feeling like Kellen Moore is their coach of the future and Tyler Shuck could be their quarterback of the future, then that's a win. The standings are not going to really mean as much to me as how I feel about the trajectory of this franchise. That's just the way I view it. Ed says, what wonderful news on a Saturday morning. I mean, I can't think of a better way to start your Saturday than that. Simply Marvelous says he needs to retire a Raider. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. In my opinion, that's the way I view Derek Carr. That's the way I'll probably always view Derek Carr, is as a Raider. I even as a Saints fan and watching this man play for the Saints, I think of Derek Carr as a Raider. I think of them making the playoffs that year that John Gruden got fired and they dealt with a lot of off-field stuff. And I think of the year that he had an MVP caliber season and unfortunately got hurt. That's what I think of Derek Carr. I don't think of any Saints stuff. And this is coming from a dude who's just watched, 2 straight years of him. So that's where I'm at. That's what the Saints get for passing over Shedeur. Bum-ass team, got no quarterback now. Let me just say something about this Shedeur thing. And I know I'm going to sound like an absolute fucking hater when I say this, but I've seen too many people mention Shedeur in the comments, so I just have to mention this. Shedeur Sanders, all 32 teams had a chance to draft him in the first round, didn't take him. In the second round, didn't take him. In the third round, didn't take him. In the fourth round, didn't take him. In the fifth round, the Browns finally took him. How come the Saints are getting trolled for not taking him when they took a quarterback that they liked better? And by the way, it's not like they took Tyler Shuck and then the next pick was Shedeur. Like, there were rounds on top of rounds for Shedeur to go, and he didn't come off the board. And again, I like Shedeur. I thought it'd be sick if the Saints took him, but they didn't. I get why they took Tyler Shuck. And I think people just have to let things play out before we jump to conclusions that the Saints made a mistake here. So it's getting pretty old. At the end of the day, he's now a 5th-round pick. He's not even a lock to make the Browns roster. And if anyone thinks it's a hot take, it's not. He's going to have an uphill climb to make that roster. So Let's move on from this Shedeur crap, please. I beg all of you, let's move on from it. Devontae says, good for him for retiring. Time for us to move on. I agree. Jamal says, it's about damn time. Who Dat fam says, Christmas came early. I know, man. I know. Simply Marvelous says, Carr could have milked the team, but that's not him. Look, I want to give him credit for this. If he wanted to slow play the fuck out of this and be like, hey, maybe I'll be ready. I don't know if I'll be ready. And then the months go by and you still don't have an update. Derek Carr could have. So in a year where I have ripped Derek Carr probably 100 times, I can't stress enough. He handled today better than you could have ever handled this situation. And I mean that as a compliment. And you know what? It is fitting that after 2 years of me bitching and moaning about Derek Carr, I'm going to spend the final day of him being a Saint saying, man, good for him because he really helped out the team. That's just where I'm at, you know? Daniel says Rattler or Shuck going to be something. I mean, that's the hope. That's the hope, man. You know, that to me is the main thing for the Saints this year. Obviously, there's other factors I'm going to watch. How does Olave look? Do Fuaga and Banks look like bookend tackles? Does the defense look good under Brandon Staley and his leadership and his 3-4 scheme? But the main takeaway for me is, does Kellen Moore's offense look good? And does Kellen Moore possibly have his quarterback of the future? Because if the Saints go into next draft feeling like they have their quarterback of the future, and it is considered a quarterback-heavy draft, the Saints can either get like the best player that's not a quarterback, like where they're picking, or you can move off that pick, gain a shit ton of assets, and start to build and add more draft capital. Like there would be a lot of endless possibilities for how they could build out the rest of their team if that were to happen. So to me, that's the main takeaway. And, you know, and that's what I'm going to keep my eye on. Jerry says, I got my early birthday present and it's not June. Man, well, first off, happy early birthday to you, Jerry. And that's quite the present. I see Montdog saying his birthday is June 8th. So hopefully I'll remember by then, but I'll give you guys a very early birthday shout out from now. But this is a pretty good one. Red T says his shoulder ain't that bad. There just ain't no teams that will take him right now, and the Saints can't afford to trade him. I don't know, man. I'm not going to say that the Saints are lying in their statement about the injury that he has. So, you know, I think that'd be a little irresponsible of me to do. I think that, you know, you know, whether or not options ran out for him, yes, I would agree on that part, right? Like we're in May, the only team left that needs a quarterback are the Steelers, and you know they seem hell bent on taking Aaron Rodgers. But I don't know if they're lying about his injury. I don't think they will. Daniel says, I'm hoping Kellen does well for y'all, considering what he did for us. Appreciate that. Respect. Ed says, thank you, MetLife Turf. Oh, man. That's pretty funny. Isaiah says, so Shuck or Rattler? It's going to be Shuck at some point. I think it's a matter of when, not if. You know, if he's the week one starter, then you're playing Shuck the whole year. But maybe Rattler looks better in camp, and then you wait till, I don't know, maybe some point mid-season to put Shuck in whenever you believe he's ready. So it's going to be Shuck at some point. It's just a matter of when, you know? C says, are we going to use the cap space at some point? Some point. I think the Saints would like to add a receiver, you know, maybe even add a corner. So I wouldn't be surprised. Hoff C735 says, mental health check-in, Chris. How are you? I'm doing pretty well, man. I hope you're doing well yourself. You know, feeling pretty good right now. You know, I still can't believe this even happened. It's one of those situations you got to drop everything you're doing and hop on live. So I'm just happy to chat with you guys, man. Is there anyone left to even sign? I mean, you know, receiver-wise, older players. You know, your Amari Coopers, your Keenan Allen. So not exactly sexy signings, but I guess depth pieces for them. Abraham says, probably the best news I could have woken up today. So glad this team is officially past the blunders that were the DA and Carr era. Yeah, it's over, man. It's definitely over. Justin Perkins says, give Devin Neal number 4 now. Didn't even think about that. A number has opened up, man. And Neal wearing number 4 is pretty sick. Yellow Nose says, I've never been a fan of Derek Carr, but I wish him all the best on his retirement. But this is a huge win for the team as far as salary cap goals and the future. Yeah. And by the way, guys, can we just say real quick that the Saints have had, you know, a pretty interesting turn this offseason? You know, I remember going back to January. Joe Brady doesn't want to interview with them. Aaron Glenn goes to the Jets. Just an utter mess, right? You can't even get an interview with Cliff Kingsbury. And it's like man, Saints are in the dumps. And look, the Saints might still be in the dumps, by the way. This is not me trying to say, oh, the Saints are great again. They are so far away from that. But the 180 that has now happened in terms of the vibes just being a little bit more positive, you get Kellen Moore after a Super Bowl run with the Eagles. You draft Tyler Shuck, which I know a lot of Saints fans aren't happy about that pick, but you drafted a young quarterback with potential, so you're hoping this guy could be the guy. And both might flame out, right? Kellen Moore might not be the right coach, and Tyler Shuck might stink. He might. But we have something to believe in now, as opposed to the Derek Carr, Dennis Allen era, where it's like, you knew what the ceiling was. It was like 9-8 and missing the playoffs in the worst division in football. And to move on from that is, a pretty good scenario. Slept on Promos Review says, hit that like button, subscribe for real Saints news and reviews. Thank you for the support. Abraham says, despite all the hate Carr gets, glad he retired and give the Saints some salary cap relief. I agree with that. I agree. Handled it like an absolute chance. Champ, who's QB1 starting the season? Does Rattler have a fair chance to start? Look, I think if Rattler plays well in, training camp, in preseason, and looks significantly better than, Shuck, especially in preseason, then I think he could start. Look, Rattler should have an edge mentally. He's been in the NFL for a year now. But I do believe that Shuck will have more opportunities because he's handpicked by Kellen Moore as opposed to Rattler being inherited by Kellen Moore. So, that's just a big difference that I see, That's the way I view it. Let's keep it rolling here. Let's see what else you got going on. Base God says, Teddy Bridgewater will be the starter. He's light years better than Shuck. Yeah, sure, but that's not how it works. Like, you guys know they're going to play Shuck at some point. They drafted him. Obviously, they're very confident in his abilities. And, at some point, they got to see if their investment's worth it. So he's going to play. It's a matter of when. Breaking news, Jake Haener retires by default. Man, Jake Haener's, his stock in New Orleans is not very high, man. Jaden says, I'm happy DC is out of New Orleans. I wish him the best with his injury. I wish him a speedy recovery, but it was time to move on. It was. It definitely was. Arch Manning incoming? I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. I don't know if he's declaring next year. I really don't. Shelby says, what happens to the dead cap the Saints would have been responsible for next year if they cut Carr post June 1st? I still think they're going to be responsible for it. I don't think they get off the hook from that. I think that the Saints are still going to have dead cap charges. It's a matter of salary cap relief and how it'll be fixed. So let me see. There's something that came out now on it. Here we go. Included the reported $30 million payback to the Saints in 2025, and assuming this retirement is processed after June 1st, Derek Carr would leave behind dead cap hits. Here we go, guys. $13 million for this year, $35 million for next year. So, that's a huge win. That is a huge win for the Saints. I forgot what the numbers were for last year. When I looked at it last time around, I believe it was like $20 million and $49 million or something last time around I looked, and this was on Wednesday. So again, dead cap charges. It just came in, guys. $13.2 million this year for Derek Carr. $35.6 million next year for Derek Carr. So this is a huge win for New Orleans. I can't stress it enough. You're saving like $20 million in terms of cap. Because here's the numbers prior. It was $20 million dead cap this year. Had they cut him, no retirement. $60 million, well, really 59 point something for next year in dead cap. Humongous savings for the Saints. We're talking, let me just do my math here, which isn't always that sharp. We're talking $32 million the Saints are about to save. So, we could bitch about Derek Carr all we want. Today, out of all days, that's a win in my book. That's a win in my book financially for New Orleans. Wesley says that they want an emergency backup. Ryan Tannehill is out there. Not a bad option either. Not a bad option either. Because that's what you're looking for. You're not looking for an Aaron Rodgers trying to turn around the tides and be, maximize your win total. That's not what you're looking for. Captain Deluxe says the rest of the roster is in no position to compete for a playoff spot. Give Moore the opportunity to develop the quarterback he chose in the draft. If that results in another 5-12 season, build on that. I think that's fair. That again, guys, that's like you said, that's what it comes down to. This is not going to be about, whether or not the Saints can contend in the NFC South. I am not a big believer in that. I think that any aspirations of that should be put to rest for the moment. I think that the Saints obviously are not built to win right now. It is trying to maximize your potential. And hopefully for the New Orleans Saints, at the end of next season, they feel like they may have the right pieces in place to get this thing off the ground. And maybe in year 2 or year 3 of the Kellen Moore era, they can be a playoff team. It is not this year, you know? You think someone pressured Carr into retiring? No, look, I think if the report's true, right, about him having a degenerative shoulder problem now with his rotator cuff, you got kids. At some point, there comes a, you made so much money. He's made over $200 million in his career. He's got kids. You got a wife to look out for. He's a smart dude, so he could go do whatever he wants after this, whether it's TV, whether it anything, really anything. Why stick around if you're not going to be able to play at your level that you want to play at, and you're jeopardizing your future health? I think that's what it comes down to. So Saints get a lot of money. Carr gets some peace of mind going into retirement. At least I would say, This one, Shedeur, sure looking good in Cleveland, but it's just rookie camp. Let me tell you, this is textbook when it comes to rookie camp, because I'll do the same shit for the Saints when they're in rookie camp, when they have OTAs. It's just guys warming up in shorts, no pads, and us getting hyped about it because we've missed football. That's the reality of it, That's the truth of the matter. Try and advance here a little bit so I can get close to close to the right timing here. King Voodoo says a torn labrum and you're 34. Not good. Yeah, definitely not. Jaden says it's the best day ever for the Saints right now. It is up there, man. It is up there. So I think for us Saints fans in an offseason that's featured a lot of crap, this is the biggest win of them all. Biggest win. Andrew says, I heard from Ross Jackson that we get $30 million back from the deal. Yeah, they recouped the 30 that was going to be for this year, which is a huge win for the Saints. And then, as I mentioned before, the Saints' dead cap charges are not as hefty as they were supposed to be. So 2025, if the Saints just cut him outright, was supposed to be $20 million. And 2026, had they cut him, the dead cap charge would have been 60. That dead cap charge is now $35 million. So yeah, the Saints are going to still pay a little bit for not having Derek Carr next year, but they're not getting absolutely smoked in that point. So Carr retired, and us Saints fans are going to definitely, hopefully reap the benefit of it. Montauk says this offseason turned out pretty good, surprisingly. Ed says Carr retired, MSG for game 3. What a wonderful day I'm going to have. Oh, are you going to MSG for game 3? Or you're just talking about MSG, game 3 between the Knicks and Celtics being at MSG? Because that's going to be you want incredible atmospheres in sports. I don't know if we'll get much better than that. I genuinely don't know if we'll get much better than that. For the Saints, for the fans attacking Carr's personal life and health, please cut that shit out and keep it a football. I agree. And this is coming from a guy who's been very critical and a little bit of an ass, I must say myself. Again, Derek Carr's problems that I've had are all about off the field in terms of leadership, not what he is as a guy or what he does with his family. I don't care. He seems like a great dude in that regard. My problem is I think the Saints paid a lot of money for a guy who's not elevated the team to where they want to be or where they thought they would be, So I agree. We take the personal stuff and we throw it to the side because, man, it's not happening. TJB says, if Rattlers starts and we go 7-1, how is Shuck coming in? Well, first off, you're not going to start 7-1. And for people saying, well, how can you say that? I mean, the Saints went 0-6 with Rattler last year. I don't think they're going 7-1 to start the season. Second, if they were, let's just say they did start 7-1, then that means he's doing something right, which means the Saints might have their quarterback. And I have made this very clear. My stance is, if you told me one of the two between their young quarterbacks would be the starter, I don't care which one it is. I really don't care which one it is. I just want them to have their young quarterback. That said, they're not going 7-1 with either guy. I don't think they would go 7-1 if Patrick Mahomes was their quarterback to start the season. So I'm not really worried about that. But that to me is a fun hypothetical, but I don't see it happening. Clyde says, happy Mother's Day. Yes, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Happy Mother's Day weekend. Hope you guys are, getting the appreciation that y'all all deserve. Mike says, what trade could we try to make for a proven quarterback in the league? They should not be making a trade for a quarterback, in my opinion. In my opinion, there's no need to make. They're not in position to contend anyway. So why trade future assets to go? Why trade future assets when that's not going to help you contend anyway? Would you consider making a pitch to snag Deshaun Watson a 1-year deal to let Tyler sit and learn? Are we trying to make Tyler Shuck learn bad massage etiquette? Like what is he going to learn from Deshaun Watson at this point? Genuine question. Like and this isn't me trying to be an ass. What is he going to learn from Deshaun? Unfortunately, Deshaun's days being a leader are gone. Mr. Barnes says, I'm a Louisville fan. I know what we have. Dude's a baller. Y'all tripping. Hell yeah. Hope he is, man. Look, man, I think it's hilarious how shit works when it comes to NFL fans. Because I'm guilty of this sometimes too. But the way fans grade drafts is if a team drafted a guy that they liked, don't matter what position, don't matter what school, doesn't matter what the grade is from other people. Did you draft someone I like? So, when it comes to Shuck, we got no clue how he's going to be. He might be the worst quarterback in the league. He might be a franchise quarterback. And it doesn't matter because in the moment, because it wasn't the guy that Saints fans wanted, half of them don't like him. So dumb. Let's let him play football. Let's see how it goes and move from there. Will the Colts entertain any offers for Anthony Richardson? Maybe. But I don't know if that's the move that the Saints want to make right now. You have 2 developmental quarterbacks on your roster. Why would you go get a third? That's just the way I view it, but maybe I'm wrong for that. Daniel says, do y'all think Shuck will be the answer long term? I don't know, man. I really don't know. I hope he will, but I don't know. Mr. Barnes says, man, what if we get Jeremiah Smith in 2 years? I'll try to do a backflip live on set here. And I've never done a backflip in my life, so you guys will probably watch me, snap my neck on camera, but I will try. Brenton says, has the new Pope chimed in on this topic yet? It's a great question, man. That's a great question. He's a ball knower. He's a Chicago White Sox fan, allegedly, I think. So who knows? He's definitely not caring about the Saints, though. But maybe his presence gave them good vibes, and that's what led to this, Mike says, do we need to consider going to snag a veteran quarterback? Again, via free agency, yes, not trade. That's how I feel about it. Montauk says, listen, I don't give 2 fucks about any other quarterback on another roster going forward. Only our quarterbacks. I'm a Saints fan, not no outside players fan. Yeah. I mean, I have noticed there's a lot of Saints fans who are very big on like rooting for the Bengals because of Joe Burrow. And I'm like, look, I like Joe Burrow, but can't give 2 shits what the Bengals do, man. Daniel says, Mickey Loomis might have been onto something. I don't know about that because he did bring Derek Carr in, but he definitely gets bailed out here, man. Y'all know says it's like y'all people say you can dislike somebody, but you can also respect the things they do. I think that's a fair way to put it. Bruce says, can we name this Derek Carr Day for him retiring? Fuck, might as well, right? May 10th. I'll mark it down in my calendars. I have a calendar right here. I'll mark it down. Derek Carr Day. Just for you guys. Derek Carr Day. All right, it's done. I'll honor May 10th as the day Derek Carr turned his perception around, and Saints fans stopped, getting upset about everything he does. K Rose 88 says, "Nah, we need to win 3 games max. Need that draft position." All right, just gonna say this, right? I'm not trying to single you out. So I'm gonna even take down your comment just so it doesn't seem personal because I'm not singling you out. Can we let the season start before we talk about how many games the Saints need to win or need to lose? Like, can we let it play out? I want to see this team win as many games as possible. Maybe that is 3 games. Maybe it is 6 games. Maybe it's 8 games. I don't know what it is, but let's just let the season play out and go from there. Do they need to rebuild? Absolutely. You can rebuild by being competitive, though. That's just the way I view it. And maybe I'm wrong, but that's just how I'm at. Samboy says, can we bring Michael Thomas back since Carr is gone now? I'm going to go a hard no on that one. I love Michael Thomas. He's one of my favorite Saints players I've ever watched. He hasn't played in over a year. And no other team is trying to sign Michael Thomas. So the Saints are going to go sign him when he has like no interest from anyone. I just don't. Unfortunately, I think as good as Mike is, or as good as he was, that ship has sailed for Michael Thomas being great and, being pretty much a dominant player for the Saints. Still a fan favorite, clearly. Still a fan favorite. But I just don't see how the hell he makes a difference for this team. DJ says the future's here now. Exciting times. Absolutely. Carr's church appearance a couple weeks ago was cringeworthy at best. He needs a break from public scrutiny. Win-win for him and the Saints. Do Cam Jordan and Taysom Hill have any trade value? I don't think they have any trade value, Jeffrey. I have mentioned I do wonder if the Saints were to move on from Taysom, just because of the knee injury. And I just don't know if we'll be ready for week 1. But I think we'll see. Cam, I don't think he's going anywhere. I think Cam is playing for the Saints this year. Taysom Hill's the one to watch, whether or not they move on from him or not. That's just how I view it. Mad Rumor says bring Keenan and Asante in now. See if they do that. Lance says Mickey doesn't have my trust anymore. I don't think he has anyone's trust, truthfully. Today is a win, but not necessarily because of him. Montauk says proclaim this Derek Carr Day. Chosen Fitz says happy Derek Carr Day. Mike says, does Taysom Hill still have a role on this team? And by team, I mean a Kellen Moore Saints team. Yeah, no, it's a good question. Mike, I'm not really sure. I'm really not. I think that just my gut tells me that he doesn't, but that doesn't mean for sure that he's out. But my gut tells me he's probably on the way out, whether that is by release or not, Walltown Best 88. So with Carr retirement, it helps the Saints cap right. Yes, it does. So Brock says, how does this change your cap situation? This is the best way to put it, because this is a huge win for the Saints in this regard. So because he's giving back 30 to the franchise, because that was what was for this year, the dead cap hits now for Carr, because it's going to go as a post June 1st. It was supposed to be for 2025. It's supposed to be $20 million dead cap. It's now going to be $13.2 million. And next year's dead cap, because the Saints were going to move on from Carr, whether or not he retired or not, was going to be $60 million. It is now $35.6 million. Still a hefty price, but it ain't $60 million. So the Saints are saving a ton of money because of the $30 million getting paid back. So that is the big cap relief for the Saints. What's tight end free agency looking like? That's a great question. I don't think there's really any out there that are going to make a difference for the Saints, but you asked it. I think it's a good question. We're going to look at who's available. Gerald Everett would probably be the name that I'm looking at right now, because he's worked with Kellen Moore. So, Gerald Everett's out there, Kellen Moore connection, if you want. Then you're probably looking at some older options. Jordan Akins, CJ Uzama. Kind of think he's washed, in my opinion. Nick Vannett, former Saints player, washed. So, not a lot out there, man. Truthfully, I'm not loving the option. So, if they don't like Gerald Everett, and even he's getting up there in age, I don't know if I am exactly itching to go sign a tight end. Knoxville says, why are you ignoring the Saints extending Carr even though he had a career-ending injury? They did not extend Derek Carr. They restructured his contract. They were always going to pay a huge number at the end. And that happened from last year, because after the first year Derek Carr played for the Saints, they restructured his deal. So that pushed the cap ties down the road, which meant you had to pay him at least for 2 more years. And then they restructured him again this year. Restructuring is not an extension. You're just kicking the can down the road for when you're going to have to pay the bill. Now they're still going to have to pay the bill, but it's going to be significantly cheaper because he's retiring from the NFL. So you're just shifting things. He gets the $10 million bonus this year. Saints can't touch that. They're recouping $30 million, which was for this year, salary-wise. And now, next year, instead of paying $60 million in dead cap, you're going to pay about 36. So you're still paying, but everything gets a little lighter. But they did not extend him. I need to make that clear, though. They did not extend him. Jaden says, it's crazy that DC announced right before Kellen Moore interview at 1 p.m. later today. Crazy day so far, right? Well, definitely a crazy day. Definitely a crazy day. That will be the focus of that interview. That's for sure. That's for sure. But again, I think it's going to be easy for the Saints. They can now be complimentary of Derek Carr because he could have sat at home on his couch and been like, oh, maybe I'll be ready for the season, knowing damn well he wouldn't be. And instead, the Saints are going to get some relief now. And they move on now. You wash your hands clean. It's over. It is over. We don't have to worry about this shit anymore. You will never, ever see me complain about the Derek Carr contract situation anymore. And this is the last time we're going to really talk about it. So this is just the way I view it. This is it. So we're moving on from this. Which is a luxury for us Saints fans. X says our long national nightmare is over. Bradford says, not going to lie, Carr solid as fuck for retiring. I agree. Joseph says, should the Saints try to trade for Ramsey now? I'm kind of on the outs on that, only because I do think trading for an aging corner who, I think he's going to be 31 in October. 31 to 32. I think 31 though. I don't know if I want to commit to that. I still think Ramsey's a solid football player. There is a connection there with Staley, but I don't know if that's the move that the Saints would make at this point. Like, those are moves you make when you're trying to contend. If I'm the Saints, you're trying to see if Kool-Aid McKintry's the guy. You're trying to see if Alante Taylor's the guy. You're trying to see if Quincy Riley from Louisville, who you just drafted, if he could be a guy. So, if you bring in Ramsey, yeah, that's going to help experience-wise. But, I would rather go sign Asante Samuel Jr. for like 1 year than trade for Ramsey. Even though Ramsey's better, I'm not trying to get rid of cap assets and take on a hefty contract. I'd rather just have a 1-year deal and then move off of that, Knoxville says, why would you trade away Lattimore and then turn around and trade for an older Ramsey? That's a way to put it. Better than I said it. So we'll leave it off on that. There's no reason for them. Christian says, don't be naive. MT will try to make a return to the NFL. Took some time off to get back healthy. That's fine, but when? He didn't play last year, and it's May, and I haven't heard anything about him playing. So, and again, this is coming from someone who, I can't stress it enough, he is one of my favorite players I've ever watched put on a Saints uniform. I think prime Michael Thomas, I love him more than Marcus Colston. I love him more than prime Jimmy Graham. I love Michael Thomas. But I have my doubts about whether or not he plays again. I hope he does. I hope if he plays again, regardless of what team, as long as it's not an NFC South team, I wish him all the best. Because MT was that dude. But past tense, was that dude. I just don't think he is that dude anymore. That's just the way I view it. Maybe I'm wrong. Justin says if Shuck and Rattler struggle, Garrett Nussmeier 2026. I'm sure that'll be a big talking point. But I just I don't want to go there yet. Don't want to go there yet. I want to see how these quarterbacks play before I start thinking about what the future is of this team. Because I just don't think it's I think it's a little premature to go down that road and talk about Nussmeier and what he can do yet. I understand the connection though. I mean, when your father's the OC and you're playing at LSU anyway, how can you not? Cool Sports Rhyme says, wasn't a fan of Derek Carr as a quarterback, but this was a classy move on his part. I agree. Agree wholeheartedly, man. Jaden says, where do the Saints go from here now that DC's retired? Well, Rattler and Shuck are probably going to get the biggest opportunity to start for this team. But I think you're probably looking at Shuck starting at some point. Rattler, I think, would have to be exceptional. If he is, that's awesome for us Saints fans because then you feel like a young quarterback is developing well in New Orleans. So, you're probably looking at Shuck and you're looking at Rattler. And maybe they add a veteran quarterback to this room just to have that presence there because I think both those young guys can use a veteran to lean on. You don't really have that right now. You're not exactly leaning on Jake Haener for advice. Jake Haener's the worst of the three probably. So, that's the way I view it. Bradley says, Aaron Rodgers might be the Saints' new QB1 as the Steelers try to tank for Arch if he wants to head to the 2026 draft. I think Rodgers would just retire than play for the Saints. I also don't think that the Saints would go after Rodgers. At this point, like, you just dealt with a little bit of a dramatic quarterback situation. Now you're going to go after the guy who, on any given Tuesday, can go on the Pat McAfee show and just eviscerate your franchise. I don't think that's what they want. That's just the way I see it. Brendan says, as long as we're getting younger roster-wise, I'm not tripping over anything. I feel that. I definitely feel that. Are the Saints shadow tanking? I don't think there's any shadow about it. Look, I don't think the Saints are tanking. I think the Saints are definitely, though, actively rebuilding. They could say what they want about, but the NFC South is up for grab. Fuck that. Like, they are rebuilding, Montauk says, Rodgers ain't coming here. I agree. Chuck Noll says, go get Flacco. He's in Cleveland. But hey, look, maybe he becomes available because Cleveland also has Kenny Smallhand Pickett. They got Dylan Gabriel. They got Shedeur. So, they got some guys. So maybe they move on from Flacco. Kyler Murray. No, that's expensive. And that's a move you make if you want him to be your future guy. So, I think very clearly, because we'll wrap it up with this, and obviously I'll take any other comments that you guys have. As much as I like Kyler, you're not giving up draft capital and getting him after you just drafted a quarterback with a top 40 pick. You're not. And I don't really think you should anyway. And also the stark contrast between the two, like Shuck, 6'5", Kyler Murray, obviously one of the smaller quarterbacks in the league, I think like 5'9". So, I don't think the Saints would make a move for a veteran quarterback. I think they're playing one of their young guys, and they either sink or swim. If they sink, you're drafting a quarterback next year, whether it's Sellers, whether it's Klubnik, whether it's Nussmeier, Arch if he declares, although I don't think he's going to. That's what you do. So, that's where it's at. And then if they swim, then all power to you. You might have your quarterback of the future, and you're feeling a lot better about the franchise. Elias says, why don't we go get Tyler Huntley from Baltimore? I mean, Huntley's another guy you can go after. Be pretty cheap. Wouldn't cost you much. So it's possible. Anthony says, forget quarterback. Let's go get Trey Hendrickson. Draft capital would be a lot. And then, you also not only have to give up draft capital, you're going to have to pay him a huge amount. I don't know if the Saints would want to do that. Personally, I don't think they should at this rate. And I love Trey. It sucks that the Saints never kept him, but I don't know if that's the right move to make. Brian says we should go get Keenan Allen and Asante Samuel Jr. on one-year deals. That I like a little bit better because you're adding some veterans to help build, but you're not burdening the future of the team, which, by the way, that's the main focus. Whatever the Saints do, I don't want the Saints to feel like, hey, you're just adding on top of the bill for next year. Don't do that. Don't do that at all. So, to me, that's what it comes down to. That's just how I feel about it. Brandon says, I think Tyler Shuck will start because more accurate, mature more than Spencer. He's also the hand-picked guy. So I think that's how I see it. Mike says, will we get a comp pick for Debo? I believe they will. I believe it'd be a third-round comp pick for Debo. I'd have to check again. Cool Sports Ryan says, can we get TJ Watt? I mean, they could, in theory, but no, I don't think they should. I mean, would you want to trade next year's first and then like another first after that? So don't do anything that could jeopardize their future assets. Don't, because there's a good chance you only go like 5-12 this year. So don't jeopardize any future assets if you're the Saints. So Derek Carr, he's going to retire. He does the Saints a huge favor by retiring, because that dead cap hit for next year, which was supposed to be $60 million, is now going to be $35 million. You say thank you for your service. You move on from this. You wash your hands clean of this situation, and you think about the future, whether it is Tyler Shuck, whether it is Spencer Rattler, and you hope they either sink or swim, because if they sink, you could draft a quarterback next year. If they swim, you might have their franchise quarterback, and then you progress from there. That's all that matters. That's all that matters for the Saints right now. Nothing else to me matters other than their young quarterbacks and whether or not they could develop one of them. So don't trade any future assets. Don't make any risky contract signings. Just focus on the young players. Mike says, why didn't they keep Valdes-Scantling? He went to Seattle, wanted to reunite with Kubiak's offense. So that's just the way it is. That's what it went down. Brandon says, Saints bring Jameis Winston. Funny enough, I mean, I wonder if he is available now, because New York's kind of got a cluttered offensive room too at quarterback. You bring in Jackson Dart, Russell Wilson's going to start for now. So, it's an interesting spot. I don't know if they will bring him back, but he might be up for grabs. But we'll see what happens. Brandon says, good chance Cam, DeMario, Tyron, and Taysom could retire next year. I think there's a very good chance. I think Cam for sure. Maybe Tyron. Don't know if Taysom will even be on this year's roster, and DeMario as well. That to me is the way I view it. Japanese Hercules says, no more remnants of Dennis Allen. That's the best thing about today's news. Saints officially start fresh. They do. So I'm going to put my closing thoughts on this, guys, because I got to get back to work, unfortunately, although this is also work. But I will have other content later today. And also Monday, we're going to do another show. So we'll talk about the young quarterbacks, probably not so much about Carr. So I'll answer a couple more questions from you guys, and then we'll wrap up. Toker J with the super chat. Thank you, Toker J, for the support, man. I really appreciate that, man. Brandon says, do you think AK retires next year? I do not believe so. I think AK's got another 2-3 years. Do the Saints need a full rebuild? Yes, I do believe. Daniel says, you work on Saturdays. Yeah, so, I mean, you got some of you guys know from Twitter anyway, but I'm a sports writer for The Spun, so I'm doing a lot of, especially these days, doing a lot of NFL, NBA, NASCAR, a couple of other things for them. So my Saturday, I'm usually working from 8 to 6, 8 to 7. I'm usually doing a full day on Saturday. So I took a little break from my writing. Obviously, it's, totally fine at this point. This is the biggest news of the day for us Saints fans. And I will hop over there once I'm done with this. But yeah. Brandon says, which wide receiver would you try to go get? I'd probably try to just go get Keenan Allen because I the fit with Kellen's good. Gives you a vet presence, a little bit different body of a receiver compared to what you have right now because you got a lot of speed with Olave, Shaheed, and Brandon Cooks. I think they get a little bit more of that technician at wide receiver. I think that Keenan can do that. Michael says that the Saints have number 1 pick. Manning could go pro. It's possible. I do think that will matter for the Manning family. Who has number 1 pick might dictate what they end up doing. So we'll see how that all goes down. But anyway, guys, it has been a thrilling hour with you guys. This Derek Carr situation is obviously just so huge for New Orleans. Derek Carr era obviously was not one that we're going to look on fondly. When we look back at everything, we're not going to have fond memories of Derek Carr and what he's done in a Saints uniform. But for him to retire today, he does the Saints a huge favor. That dead cap hit, like I mentioned, shrinks exponentially for New Orleans. They recoup $30 million in cap space, which is huge for them. And now all that really matters is the future with Kellen Moore at head coach, and whether it's Tyler Shuck, whether it's Spencer Rattler, whoever your young quarterback is, trying to see if they can be the guy and develop next season. If they do that, us Saints fans finally feel like there's hope in the building. But for now, you take a breath of fresh air in and you kind of process everything and embrace a new chapter for the Saints. So that's the way I view it. Salute him for retiring today. He really did them a huge service. I can't stress it enough. But the Saints being able to move on from this dark cloud is pretty damn great. So, once again, guys, I really thank you so much for tuning in. If I missed any of your other questions, I deeply apologize. We're going to do a show on Monday. So make sure if you guys have time, pop by on Monday. We'll talk more Saints. I'll probably have another video tonight. Maybe I'll go live again tonight if I have time. So don't rule out that. But until then, guys, make sure to subscribe to Boot Crew Media's YouTube page. And until then, stay tuned for more from the Straight Up Saints podcast, the destination for the Who Dat Nation.